Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast for music chat, new releases, hidden gems, and nostalgic deep dives. We have reached the end of the Throwback Friday series, and to close it out, I have a banger of a record for you. I will be discussing Violator by Depeche Mode. And before we get into the episode, if you enjoy music discussions like this, please consider following the podcast or leaving a like, depending on where you're listening. It really helps the show reach more people, and it means a lot for a small independent podcast like this one. Violator is the 7th studio album by synth-pop electronic icons Depeche Mode. It was released on the 19th of March 1990 by Mute Records. It was produced by the band and Mark Ellis, also known as Flood. The mixing was provided by Francois Kevorkian and Daniel Miller. It is the follow-up to their massive 1987 project, Music for the Masses. The band built on that success, especially in the United States, to deliver one of the most beloved synth-pop albums of all time. Together with Anton Corbijn's recognisable and iconic artwork, the album spawned successful singles, accompanied by striking visuals in the music videos. The era propelled Depeche Mode into international stardom, and they supported the record with the huge World Violation tour. Violator reached number 2 on the UK Albums chart and peaked at number 7 on the Billboard 200. Depeche Mode took the anthemic style of Music for the Masses and explored it even further, incorporating many genres into Violator's overall sound. Flood had previously worked with Nick Cave, U2, Erasure and Nine Inch Nails, and felt that Depeche Mode could merge their trademark synth sound with a harder edge. His experience and approach with rock artists was perfect, as the band wanted to explore that darker route. Flood and Alan Wilder worked well together. Flood was able to provide the technical elements, and Wilder worked on the arrangements. Flood also encouraged the band to use the guitar, and Dave Gahan explained that Violator contained more guitar than previous projects, and you could say that the guitar has stuck around in some form ever since. I've wanted to cover Depeche Mode for the longest time. I knew that Violator would be the first Depeche album to appear, and when the podcast was born just over a year ago, I had a long list of albums to include. Violator was of course included in that list, and it wasn't intentional, but it always seemed to slip through the net. Now that the podcast is in its 2nd year, it makes perfect sense to finally cover Violator now. So here we are. Depeche Mode are one of my favourite bands. I was aware of them growing up, but my dad didn't play them in the house. It was the Violator era when I started to take notice of them. Enjoy the Silence and Personal Jesus were everywhere on MTV, and I listened to Enjoy the Silence all the time, as it was included on Now 17 compilation that I owned on cassette. They fell off the radar for me during my teenage years, but I was aware of their big singles and videos due to my excessive and obsessive MTV watching back in the 90s. It was through Exciter in 2001 is when I finally sat up and took notice of them. That was the tour that I saw them for the very first time in Manchester, and they've been in my life ever since. It's very difficult to pick a favourite Depeche album, as there are so many. It can change depending on the day or mood, but one thing is certain is that Violator would end up in my top 3. I am excited to discuss this album and to share my love with you all. If you are familiar with Violator, then I hope you will enjoy this episode. If you are new to Depeche Mode and this record, you're in for a real treat. If you love dark synth pop, Violator is the album for you. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, then please support the artists I cover by streaming, downloading, or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, World in My Eyes. I can't think of a better way to introduce the Violator record. World in My Eyes sets up the album perfectly. Just like Never Let Me Down Again from Music from the Masses, it makes another bold statement and proves that the band have elevated their sound even further from the last. I love to see progression, and it's a shame that it wasn't a bigger hit in the UK. Reaching 17 in the UK singles chart as the fourth single isn't bad going, but I honestly think it deserves better. However, that chart placement doesn't change anything because, my God, what a banger. This track is perfection from start to finish. This is everything that I love about synth pop and electronic music. I think having Flood on board was an inspired choice. He was completely on board with the sonic direction the band wanted to take. It proves that electronic music can have passion and soul. It completely flips the notion that music with synths is cold with no emotion. This passion is all down to Martin Gore's lyrics. If you are familiar with Depeche Mode's discography, I'm sure you are aware of the sexual side to the band. Martin is not afraid to explore sexuality in his lyrics, and that's what makes the band so refreshing to me. This track is sexy and sensual, and Martin himself has called the track a very positive song. He confirmed that love and sex and pleasure are positive things, and he is so right. Martin uses descriptive imagery, but it never ever comes across as cringe or unsexy. The lead vocals by Dave are commanding and confident, and you believe every word he is saying. Just that line of, "Let me show you the world in my eyes," is everything. The track is filled with so much desire, passion, and sexual tension. Honestly, it really gets you in your feels. I just want to take this moment to dedicate this track to the late, great Andy Fletcher. He often declared it as his favourite Depeche Mode song, and I feel his spirit and presence will live on, especially with this track. Andy, you are deeply missed, but the music will live on forever. Track 2, Sweetest Perfection. This track features lead vocals by Martin Gore, and I think his vocals on Violator are some of his strongest. He pours so much emotion into his vocal performance here, and I love his delivery and cadence. It's so crystal clear in the production. Dave Gahan had suggested to lay down the vocals for Sweetest Perfection, and I am glad that decision got overturned. I think Dave would have delivered a great vocal, but Martin really shines here. The instrumental and production blend with Martin's heavenly voice perfectly, and the song displays a satisfying build and release halfway through. It stands out as a dark, psychedelic, and deeply atmospheric track. There is a stark sonic contrast from World in My Eyes. yet the two tracks remain cohesive. The swirling synths sound fantastic, especially on headphones. The synth textures rise and fall, and it creates a trippy listening experience. It's interesting following on from the previous track. The healthy and consensual intimacy is flipped, and Sweetie's perfection feels like there is some self destructive behaviour. The lines in the chorus of the sweetest infection of body and mind, sweetest injection of any kind, could mean the pleasure of sex or addiction. There seems to be a pursuit of pleasure, good or bad. There is a darker undertone running through it, and when those drums eventually kick in, the payoff is so satisfying. It probably falls in the underrated portion of the tracks, but it has so many awesome elements that makes you want to keep coming back for more. Track 3, Personal Jesus. Personal Jesus was released as the lead single on the 29th of August 1989, and I would suspect that when this single dropped, the wait for Violator must have felt like forever. That 6 month gap seems highly unusual, but I would assume it created some killer promotional campaign build up at the same time. Flood confirmed that the track was chosen for the lead single, as it showcased something that the general public wouldn't expect from Depeche Mode. I think Mute Records took the gamble when Violator was still in the recording and mixing stage, because not only was the song worlds apart sonically to previous singles, it gave the band breathing room to work on the rest of the tracks. That gamble paid off because the single was incredibly successful. It was supported by a standout video filmed in Spain. The image of the band members looked incredibly different from the previous era, a bit more rough around the edges, on the verge of looking like a rock band, completely shedding the synth pop image from previous. I think it gave the fans, critics, and wider general public that Depeche Mode is now entering the new decade with a new perspective, sound, and look. Releasing a new song which is guitar driven was the complete opposite of what was popular chart wise in 1989. The song kind of stuck out in a sea of Stock Aitken and Waterman, Eurodance, House, and New Jack Swing. Martin Gore was inspired by the 1985 book Elvis and Me, written by Priscilla Presley, for the lyrical content. He explained in an interview that the song is about being a Jesus for somebody else, someone to give you hope and care. Priscilla called her husband Elvis her own personal Jesus in her book, and that line really struck a chord with Martin. The lyrical content, the refrain of reach out and touch faith over the stomping beat and John Lee Hooker style riff are ingredients that you wouldn't expect in a Depeche Mode single. The song became a worldwide smash, and it was Warner Brothers' best-selling 12-inch of all time up to that point. The sales surpassed icons like Madonna and Prince, other artists on the Warner roster. Even John Lydon praised the track and commented on the bravery of the subject matter and sonic direction. Even though the track has been slightly overplayed over the years, and I will be honest, it's not my favourite Depeche song, the impact and legacy will remain. It was such a refreshing statement to introduce the Violator era, and the band always find a way to inject so much energy and power into the track in their live shows. Track 4, Halo. I would say that this track is all about the huge arrangement and production. Dave Gahan delivers another soaring baritone vocal performance. Sonically, this track is grand and dramatic, and those qualities is why it works so well. Alan Wilder confirmed that Halo is his favourite track on the album, and it's easy to see why. I think that Alan's skill as a musician and producer is demonstrated in the way how the track is arranged. Using drum loops in the production is a technique that was fairly new to them. I love Martin Gore's high pitched, echoing backing vocals that blend with Dave's voice in the uplifting chorus. It's always a treat hearing them sing together like this, and it kind of foreshadows their vocal performances in the next track. It feels like Depeche Mode have always had this ability to not only tell their story with soaring synths and electronica, but one of their strengths is using vocal texture within the production. Halo has this dramatic tension with the vocals, drums, and then the synth string arrangement that arrives near the outro. It elevates the track even further, giving it a huge widescreen moment to close it all out. I have been listening to a lot of Violator in preparation for this episode, and while listening to Halo with those synth strings, it now reminds me of B-side My Joy from the Songs of Faith and Devotion era. I feel both tracks belong in the same sonic universe. Halo mirrors the same sonic texture of My Joy, and if you aren't familiar with this B-side, I urge you to check it out because it's fantastic. If I have just one tiny criticism of Halo, I think it would really benefit of having a bridge to break up the repetition of the chorus towards the outro. It doesn't take away of how great the track is, and it's just an observation. However, the live version on the Excited tour is something that I will always associate the track with now, and seeing it live in Manchester back in 2001. If you're listening right now and enjoying this is your cue to hit like before you forget. I really do appreciate all of the support. Thank you. Track 5, Waiting for the Night. We have now reached the halfway point in the record, and this track serves as the centrepiece. There is a sudden sonic shift, and the pace is slowed right down. The result is a stunning ambient and atmospheric piece which brings a peaceful stillness into the track list. Alan Wilder talked about the inspiration for the track and confirmed that he had been listening to Tangerine Dream with Flood and that they wanted to create a similar atmosphere for Waiting for the Night. That sequence at arpeggio is so fucking beautiful. The track is driven by a continuous, bubbling, water drop synth loop that is incorporated into the production. Even though the track is sparse, there is still so much complexity going on. And when you listen to this track on a good pair of headphones, you will pick up on all of the little details going on. The production is so clean and crystal clear with some stunning texture and synth sounds. The vocal arrangement here is a stunning evolution from the previous track Halo. Dave and Martin sing almost the entire track together in a blended, close unison. Dave restrains his usual baritone in favour for a softer vocal. They support each other and fuse their voices as a soothing instrument that enhances the song's lullaby-like quality. Rather than framing darkness as something sinister and scary, the song is like a protective blanket. It's something that I personally connect with. Finding sanctuary in the dark is absolutely beautiful. Those quiet, isolated moments in solitude is something that I will never take for granted. What is interesting is that this track is about searching for peace and tranquility, and the next track is called Enjoy the Silence. The connection there could be intentional, but it proves how important the album experience is, and for the listener to experience an album as a whole, exactly as the artist intended. Track 6, Enjoy the Silence. If you are not familiar with Depeche Mode and Violator, I am sure that you have heard Enjoy the Silence at some point. It still receives regular radio airplay here in the UK, and it was a huge worldwide hit for the band in 1990. It is their best-selling single, and it won Best British Single at the Brit Awards in 1991. It's one of the band's most recognisable and beloved tracks, and its lasting impact and legacy has inspired so many artists. The initial demo was a ballad written by Martin Gore, just featuring his vocals, and the backing arrangement played on a harmonium. When fellow band member Alan Wilder heard the demo, and especially the chorus lyric of All I Ever Wanted, he heard this as something Neil Tennant of the Pet Shop Boys would deliver. He then had the idea of speeding it up and transforming the song as an up-tempo dance track. This came with some resistance and doubt with this suggestion, especially from Martin, who argued that the title of the song doesn't go with a disco beat. Flood and Alan Wilder instructed the rest of the band to give them space to work on the track, and that included a super sulk from Martin Gore, which lasted 2 days. And you could say that the rest was history. The band have confirmed that the process of completing the song happened very quickly. The iconic riff by Martin Gore is the core of the song when you hear it now. Andy Fletcher said that the completion was one of the most magical moments of his career. They knew that they had a huge single on their hands. It's funny how moments like that happen, and who knows what the turnout would have been if Alan didn't have that idea to speed it up. I think the legendary music video directed by Anton Corbijn helped to elevate the song even higher. He presented the band like never before, in the image of Dave Gahan dressed as a king, wandering around in different settings with a deck chair, received heavy rotation on MTV. When you hear the song, the first thing that springs to mind is the music video, and you really couldn't imagine the song having different visuals. It's one of those moments in pop culture where everything clicked. Anton really understood the assignment. And after some resistance, again, they trusted him with his vision, and the band eventually agreed that the video was among the best they'd ever made. I just want to note that the album version is slightly longer, as there are 2 minutes following on, which is the hidden track, interlude number 2, Crucified. This interlude features a vocal performed by Andy Fletcher. It's just one word of him shouting crucified with some vocal modification. But the interlude is quite eerie, and I think that is intentional. It sets up the last 3 tracks, which are darker, and this is the point in the record where I feel Depeche are really firing on all cylinders, and they raise the bar even higher. Track 7, Policy of Truth. Right, I've wanted to talk about this song for the longest time. This section might be a long one, so please bear with me. Not only is Policy of Truth one of my highlights from Violator, and that is a challenge picking favourites in its own right, it is one of my favourite Depeche Mode tracks. It is definitely in the top 5 for sure. I will give anything to hear it for the very first time again, to have that instant bond with a song, and how it made me feel is an experience that I will never forget. It blew my fucking mind, and all these years later, I still feel the same way about it. Sonically, it feels like another shift is happening. This feels darker, brooding, but expansive at the same time. It's got this sultry, sexy groove running all the way through it, and honestly, you just don't want it to end. The production is truly out of this world. Every element is there for a reason, and it's got real purpose and substance behind it. I love how the synths and guitar are incorporated into the arrangement. There is a coldness present, but slinky and danceable all at the same time. That shit is incredibly difficult to pull off. And I think the real driving force behind it is down to Flood's production skills. I mentioned earlier that he had previously produced for Nine Inch Nails, and both worlds are connected with Policy of Truth. This isn't bright, happy, or pristine pop. The bass line and drums have grit to them. There is some serious meat to this track, and it kind of bridges the gap between alternative dance music and industrial rock. To open up the track with the line, "You had something to hide, should have hidden it, shouldn't you?" is simple, but it says so much. It feels like a burn or a mic drop moment right from the get go. This person is being called out, and there is a brutal simplicity, and the song doesn't ease the listener into the story. You are dropped right in the middle of the mess, and it's oh so satisfying. It feels conversational and phrased like a rhetorical question, and Dave Gahan's vocal delivery is absolutely on point here. I interpret the song as the "something to hide" was cheating. Little hints like problems multiplied, and in the stunning bridge with the line, "Now you're standing there tongue tied, you'd better learn your lesson well." It's saying that infidelity is exactly the kind of secret where the truth doesn't set you free. Instead, it causes a chain reaction of destruction. Funnily enough, I've just finished watching all 5 seasons of the TV series The Affair. I watched it all over the span of the last few months, and listening to this song recently made me think of the show. It deals with the aftermath and the pain caused by infidelity. What I'm trying to say here is that the moral of the story is, well, don't give in to those temptations and don't cheat, because people will get hurt in the end. I love how Martin Gore writes, especially about love and sex and the complicated feelings that we all have as humans. He taps into that world, and there is no other songwriter who I can think of who expresses those emotions like Martin can. I feel he simply doesn't get enough credit as a songwriter, and he isn't afraid to tread into messy territory. Violator is mostly about the tension between pure love and physical temptation, sometimes with deep, unhealthy desires. And Martin writes about that so beautifully. I just want to take this moment to dedicate this track to my late mum. She adored Policy of Truth so much, and she would always ask me to play this, and we would vibe out together. Listening to this was bittersweet for a while. It was hard for me to get through, but I feel now that I am able to listen to it again with a smile and think about the memories I made with her. Track 8, Blue Dress. Blue Dress is the penultimate track, and it serves as a stark, dramatic shift in tone. The track strips away the heavy industrial rhythms and beats to deliver something intimate, voyeuristic, hypnotic, and in Martin Gore's own words, pervy. Martin is also back on lead vocal duty, and his vulnerable, tender delivery is perfect for a song like this. He is no stranger for incorporating these kinds of themes into Depeche Mode's music. On Black Celebration, there is Dressed in Black, and I feel that Blue Dress is the flip side to that track. Sonically and lyrically, they kind of bookend each other, whether that is intentional or not. Both tracks use clothing as a psychological anchor. In Martin Gore's lyrical universe, garments are never just clothes. They are symbols of power, submission, and absolute devotion. Yes, Blue Dress might come across as pervy and a bit weird, but there is also a gentle tenderness behind it at the same time. Martin sings in the chorus, "Something so simple, something so trivial, makes me a happy man." That sentiment sums up the whole song. He is dependent on the visual image of this person dressing just to feel okay. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, and even Alan Wilder confirmed that the song is his least favourite track from Violator. And if you feel that way about it, that's completely okay. But I am drawn to anything a bit weird, a bit unusual, and this track works for me as the penultimate track. I might have a different opinion if it was track 2 or something, because I would find that jarring. But Depeche Mode and Flood have really given the track placements a lot of thought. It's clear that they have given the listeners the whole album experience. What is clever about Blue Dress is that, yes, it sounds a bit eerie and atmospheric. That is intentional, as you can feel a shift towards the outro of the song. Blue Dress doesn't truly end. Instead, it dissolves into a hidden ambient interlude, interlude number 3, featuring vocals from Martin. This interlude and the flawless transition into the last track, Clean, is probably one of my favourite transitions in a record ever. No, actually, fuck it. There is nothing like it. It is my favourite transition. Track 9, Clean. If you are a regular listener to the podcast, I've talked about some of my favourite album closers with the records I've covered. It's really hard trying to rank them as they are all different from each other, but Clean would be up there, top 3 for sure. Clean provides a monumental finale to Violator, and just like Policy of Truth, I would give anything to experience this track for the first time again. I remember hearing Clean and I was like, holy shit, what the fuck was that? It scratched an itch that I didn't know I had. And I remember that I had a period where I was completely obsessed with this song. Alan Wilder confirmed that Clean was inspired by Pink Floyd's song One of These Days from their 1971 album Medal. Instead of using a sample and requesting clearance, the heavy rhythmic bass riff was programmed by Alan using a combination of an analog synth and a sampled bass guitar. There are so many details, so many layers and complexity to this track, and if you haven't heard this track before, I urge you to dim the lights, light a candle, and appreciate this on a good pair of headphones. Dave Gahan's vocal delivery is deeply restrained, and he sings in a lower register tone. It's mature but commanding and haunting. Dave sings Martin Gore's words with complete conviction, and you believe every word he is saying. There is some dark foreshadowing here, which makes it even more chilling. Just a few years later, Dave Gahan would experience his own struggles with drug addiction. Hearing him sing, "Now That I'm Clean," gives it more emotional weight. I love how the refrain of the word "sometimes" is used. It's only one word here, but I love the subtle production in the way Martin's voice overlaps Dave's vocal. It also sounds like there is a vocoder or vocal modification underneath. I think that the single word of "sometimes" is like the voice in your head, an intrusive thought, trying not to give in to temptation. And Martin's voice represents that. It makes the song deeply unsettling, but like drugs and any other vices, this track is beautifully addictive. I also think that the use of the word "sometimes" is a spiritual callback to the track "Sometimes" from Black Celebration. On the 1986 track, Martin sang about flaws, being trapped in your own head and over-analysing every move. But in Clean, that exact concept of human doubt is not backed by a simple piano ballad. It's heavily processed and menacing, and still lingers well after Clean has faded out. I've always thought that the atmospheric outro of Clean foreshadows the sonic direction of the next record. You just know that it's going to be moodier, darker, and a bit fucked up. Depeche Mode chose not to end Violator on a happy pop ending. Instead, they gave the listener stark atmosphere and a sensual energy, and it acts as a direct portal into 1993's Songs of Faith and Devotion. This shows that Violator doesn't truly end. It serves as a gateway and leaves the door wide open to the chaos that was about to follow. Violator went on to sell well over 7 million copies worldwide and is now widely regarded as not only Depeche Mode's defining masterpiece, but one of the greatest synth pop albums ever made. It transformed the band from alternative favourites into genuine global superstars, while proving that electronic music could be both commercially successful and artistically ambitious. Its influence can still be heard today, inspiring countless artists across synth pop, alternative, rock, and electronic music. Even over 35 years later, wow, by the way, Violator continues to sound remarkably modern, with songs like Enjoy the Silence and Personal Jesus remaining as powerful and relevant as ever. Artists such as Tori Amos, Johnny Cash, and Marilyn Manson covered tracks from this era, and Violator continues to be a reference point for so many artists from all genres. Corey Taylor from Slipknot has spoken how much he loves and adores their work, and the Pet Shop Boys cited Violator as an inspiration for their Behaviour album. The duo said that the record raised the bar. The band's popularity reached extraordinary levels during this era. Their 1990 record signing at Warehouse Records in Los Angeles attracted thousands of fans, with the crowd growing so large that police were forced to shut the event down. It became one of the defining moments of Depeche Mode's career and a remarkable reminder of just how passionate their fan base had become. It's difficult to imagine an album creating that kind of excitement today. Much of Violator's enduring brilliance also belongs to Alan Wilder. His meticulous attention to detail, combined with producer Flood's willingness to experiment, pushed Depeche Mode's sound to new heights. Together they created an album that was polished, fresh and timeless, while laying the foundations for the darker, more expansive direction the band would explore on Songs of Faith and Devotion. Even the B-sides from this era were extraordinary. Dangerous, Sea of Sin and Happiest Girl are all so strong that they could have easily earned a place on the album itself, highlighting just how creatively inspired the band were during these sessions. Martin Gore's songwriting also raised the bar, something that I feel he deserves more praise for. He taps into so many themes in Violator, such as religion, guilt, pleasure, sex, love, seeking peace and solitude. His songwriting is multifaceted and layered. And then there's the artwork. Anton Corbijn's simple image of a single red rose against a black background has become one of the most recognisable album covers in music history. Instantly identifiable, endlessly imitated, and forever associated with Depeche Mode, it perfectly captured the elegance, mystery and romance that runs through the album itself. Violator wasn't simply another successful album, it was a moment where everything aligned. The songwriting, the production, the artwork, the videos, the performances, and the cultural impact. It's why we're still talking about it now. It is the perfect candidate to close out this current series of Throwback Friday, as it is a record that people have grown up with. It's been a part of so many people's lives, and I see so much love for Violator and Depeche Mode on social media today. And if you haven't experienced this stunning synth pop record yet, please bless your ears immediately. I guarantee that it will change your life, because it changed mine. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow, like or share, as it helps other music lovers discover my podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the Indie Pop Girl podcast. It really helps the algorithm push the video out to more people, and as a small independent podcast that's still growing, every like and subscription genuinely makes a huge difference. I'm posting full episodes, shorts and little teasers over there, so there's always something new to watch. Let me know in the comments if you love this record and if you are a fan of Depeche Mode. I always read and respond to comments, and I love hearing what you all think. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at the Indie Pop Girl, and on TikTok at the Indie Pop Girl podcast. And if you want to dive even deeper, there's a public Spotify playlist called Favourite Tracks from Podcast Episodes, where I add some of my top picks from each record I cover. It's updated as new episodes drop, so you might just find your next obsession. I will be back next week with another brand new release review. I'll be discussing a highly anticipated album from a pop superstar who I have recently covered on the podcast. Until then, I'm Rachel, the Indie Pop Girl. Thanks for listening, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.